To talk about the actual thing that we're here to talk about, exploring creativity. Wow, these are some of the things that I thought of as far as how do we as musicians explore creativity. Now this is from a perspective of a group performance. How does the group as a whole explore creativity in this style, in this context? So how we arrange the music for this group, how we compose the music for this group is an expression of creativity, just in itself. It doesn't matter what piece we're playing. But how we arrange it, who plays the melody, how fast we do it, what style we do it in, that's what this stuff is. Changing styles. We could play it as a bossa nova. We could play it as really up-tempo. We could play it as thrash metal. We could play it as so many different ways. And there's so many different ways to play them. We can change the meters. We could have done Sunny Moon for 2 in like 3/4. We could do it in 5. I'm just trying to I'm making it up to make a point. So we can change the meter. We can even change the meter. Meter is how many beats per bar. We can even change the meter from phrase to phrase. You can play the last bar as a 5/4 bar every time of every 4-bar phrase. He's shaking his head like, I don't want to think that much. How we do the piece, how we introduce the piece. We could have done an intro on that piece. We could have done like 8 bars of the pedal 5. You know, just to introduce the piece. We could have done a different ending instead of just ending at the end of the melody. We could have said a different. Actually, I could have said, let's do an A-Train ending, and they'd say, okay. It's a tradition. We all know how that goes. That's A-Train ending, because that's how take the A-Train. Yes?
Question.
We're creative as a group, but we're also creative as individuals. And the different ways that we're creative as individuals are mainly the people that we listen to. Like there was a gentleman that was talking about listening. It was you talking about listening back to people. The kind of people that Matt talk about some of the people that you listen to that influence you as a tenor saxophone.
Michael Brecker, John Coltrane, Wayne Shorter, Dexter Gordon, Hank Mobley.
You ask a different tenor player, you'll get different answers. They might overlap, but those things will make you play a certain way. That will kind of signify who you are. Matt makes a specific kind of sound that another saxophonist doesn't make. That's less of an issue with the piano, because piano is piano. There's not much you can do. Bass is extremely personal. How basses sound is an extremely personal way of playing. How I set up my drums is very personal to me. The kind of sound that I get, how I tune the drums, what kind of heads I use, what kind of cymbals I use. That's very important. So those are different ways that I'm expressing myself as a player that I've learned. How we phrase, which is basically how, you all phrase your own way when you speak, when you talk to somebody. You're making, if I talk like this, it's a certain kind of phrasing. But if I talk like this, it's another kind. So that's also in the way we play. How players have learned, too, makes a big difference in how they play. Like if somebody's an ear player, which means that they're playing basically by listening. They're not thinking in any other terms except by listening or composing. I think of Dan kind of as an ear player because a lot of it is coming from inside his head. A lot of what he's playing is coming from inside his head. Versus somebody who's a lick player, which means they learned a lot of licks. They play a lot of things that they played a million times. I don't want to categorize Matt as that kind of player, but I know he learned a lot that way. He learned a lot. He learned playing a lot that way. So he comes across as a lick player. And then there's people who are thinking theoretically as they look at the changes or kind of processing how they can get through the changes and are playing from that point of view. You can solo using paraphrase. Anybody ever listen to Thelonious Monk? Yeah, he's a guy that really, to me, he will take the melody of the tune and kind of play around with the melody of the tune. To me, that's called paraphrase soloing, where you're paraphrasing what the melody was. He does solo too, but not so much. Not like somebody like Oscar Peterson does, or any number of other people. A composer is going to improvise in a completely different way than a soloist. The guy that I think mostly of in that regard is Wayne Shorter. As a tenor soloist, he's always composing. And he'll take an idea and he'll work it out in his playing. It's a very intimate thing, actually. And how you react to it, or how she reacts to it, or how he reacts to it are going to be three different things. Which is, again, what makes this music art music and not pop music. Because if it's pop music, most everybody's going to react the same exact way. You all look at a piece of great art, like Munch's The Scream, and everybody takes away something different. Right? Somebody might go, wow, that's really beautiful. Somebody might go, oh, that's the most horrifying thing in the world. It's the same thing here. That's what makes this art to me. Style choices, how we play our solos, how we play as a group. Traditional, swing, these are all ways that different people play. If I'm playing, I could put somebody up here who basically plays like Charlie Parker. We would call him a bebop player. He's made the choice to sound like Charlie Parker. That's the sound of Charlie Parker. That's his personal choice, a way of expressing freedom, a way of expressing his individuality. So I had asked them the other day, yesterday when we had a rehearsal, to think about overnight how they personally express themselves. How are they personally creative in their playing? So Matt, you told me you were thinking about it. How are you personally creative?
Yeah, I think the thing that sums up the way I try to look at jazz the best is a quote from Miles is learn the changes and then forget them. Like a lot of things that you look at, there's a lot of technical things that you can do with chord changes. There's a million different scales you can play on. You can play things that sound a little bit off, like you're talking about playing outside of the chord changes that can make it sound, have a little more tension, or you can do something that sounds spacey. There's so many different things you can do just with one chord. And it's awesome to learn those things, and it's so much fun to figure out what you can do with those chords. But when you're here and you're on the bandstand and you're playing with those people, you shouldn't be thinking when you're playing that chord, oh, I could kind of do this, I could kind of figure out how to make this sound work. Well, to me, it's just, you let go.
But there are people who do.
There are people who do.
And again, that's a choice, and that's what makes him different from somebody else.
And what I choose to do is just let go and not effectively, space out. Not thinking about what kind of tonality I want to have, what kind of shape, and just play. And what kind of comes out, what I try to get to come out is, my expression of who I am, I guess.
I have a feeling is that sort of like what we do with other things, is we just put it in our subconscious.
Exactly. It's called, to me, I call it internalizing. That we internalize what we're doing so that it becomes a part of us. Yeah. Miller?
I am, just because of the role I have, got that, I'm the most important person. I'm very relegated to the harmony, and it's my job to make things really understandable. And so depending on the situation I'm in, rhythm is my kind of vice, and what I get to play around with more than anything else. And as a drummer, John will do this too, and where you can add, you can like imply a feel, like when we went through those different grooves, even if John's still playing a swing pattern, I can play something else that will imply a Latin or imply over the bar triplet feel that makes everybody really confused. And that is how, in a more constrained setting, that's kind of what I can do. Otherwise, I'm a composer as well. And so, in other situations, I will play a very, very simplified kind of bass roll, like root notes, things like that, and then hear other melodic inner voices, ideas, and play those as well, without stepping on anybody's toes. So it has to be very subtle in my role.
And just to clarify on something he said, just because he's doing that, he's using rhythm right now as his main way of being creative, doesn't mean it's going to always stay that way. He's going to change. He's going to find something else that interests him, that he wants to work on and expand in his playing. It's a constant evolution. You never stop practicing jazz or trying to be a better player. It's a lifelong pursuit.
One thing that I'm very inspired by in the recordings that I've listened to with Miles Davis and John Coltrane, in their groups, the interaction that the accompanying instruments like the piano or the guitar interact with the drummer, and the bass, but mostly the drummer in sort of supporting the soloist at that moment.
What we call comping or accompanying or complementing.
We could, me and the drummer could, could say that the saxophonist plays a rhythmic figure, like we could riff off of this rhythmic figure and twist it into something completely else and ride along underneath and support him. And there's just so much we can do to sort of help the solo evolve into a new, different direction. That's sort of one of the lines of having every single jazz performance is a new performance.
There's a lot of we're all talking about what we do individually, but as a jazz musician, everything you're doing is influenced by your interaction with the people you're playing with. And so, I'm not just throwing random triplet feels to mess people up. I'll hear something he plays and riff off it. Dan was talking about it. And so, all of this is kind of conversation. Present the whole.
Dialogue.
Yeah.
Music is a language.
Yeah.
And jazz is a dialect of that language.
Very specific.
And the instruments that people pick, what does that have to do with all of this? Why does one person pick a particular instrument?
That's a good question. Why did you pick saxophone?
Kind of a weird reason. There's a guy that I thought was really cool when I was in elementary school, and I was like, I want to be like that guy. Turned out I didn't actually end up liking that guy later on. I think it's something that I don't know. You can. It's a weird kind of thing that you can go to. I've been to some jazz festivals where you meet someone, and you can look at them and talk to them, and you're just like, oh yeah, you're a trombone player, or you're. It's almost.
People then tend to fall into groups and categories of how they are.
I think it's a part of your personality that once you get to a certain level, it's just people tend to play certain instruments. I don't really know why that is.
Miller, why'd you pick?
This is an age-old story for bass players, because no 11-year-old wants to play bass. My friends had this grand idea for a band, and they had
11?
Yeah, dude. It's called Saturday's Fiesta. We're gonna be a ska band. And I was the fourth and least talented guitarist. I didn't actually play guitar. Just owned one and noodled. And they said they needed a bass player, and so I very begrudgingly ordered a bass. And I think there's as for instruments people pick, may not be so distinctive, but what they stay with. And I stayed with bass because it's really easy to get along with bass players because of this usually. But it's a very supportive role. It's not I need to be all flashy and play a bunch of solos. No, he's actually a very good sax player. But it's a thoughtful role. It's kind of in the background. Let's be supportive, and sometimes I don't, but I like to think that most of the time my personality reflects that in how I interact with humans instead of just myself an instrument.
Why'd you pick piano?
Well, I had a experience when I was younger, going to Disneyland and seeing that ragtime piano guy. And we had a piano at my parents had an upright piano, and I think I have been fishing around on it and trying to pluck out things on the piano, and I think one Christmas my mom set up some lessons for the future, and so I started taking lessons, and that was when I was very young. But since then, in high school, sort of similar situation to Miller. I really wanted. Before that time, I had just been playing by myself. I had never played in a group situation, so there was an opportunity for me to play with some really, really talented blues musicians, and they were looking for a bassist. So well, you try bass and.
Plays bass too.
Yeah. So as far as piano goes, why I enjoy piano, I love the juxtaposition of all the different colors you can get out of this huge, very wide.
Colors meaning the sound.
Yeah.
Timbre.
Very, very different things you can get out of this huge range, and like what Miller said about the bass, which is they're very, very different roles, but I like the sort of a laid-back role of sitting in the background and supporting things. I almost more identify with that than the soloing and flashiness.
I think like your degree of thoughtfulness is what kind of separates you from like some more timely people.
Well, we should take a break.
Yeah.
We should take a break.
Yeah.
We've been waiting for a while. And so choices, there's two more on the next page. They're all modern tunes. Source is from, what is that, like 2006 or something like that?
No, earlier than that.
Pretty recent, after 2000. Pools is from about 1982, a band called Steps. And then they changed their name to Steps Ahead because Steps was already taken. Like a Spinal Tap moment, it sounds like. And this was written by a pianist named Don Gromnick, but Chris Potter is heavily influenced by Michael Brecker. Michael Brecker played in Steps Ahead, so he played on this original recording. I picked these tunes because Matt loves playing this stuff, and I wanted to give him the opportunity to play this kind of stuff. And this group is uniquely suited to play more modern jazz. Miller has more of an electric mentality. In fact, we started out thinking about playing a lot of Weather Report stuff, which is a fusion jazz band from the 60s and 70s and 80s. Yeah, Jaco Pastorius was in, and Joe Sample, and Peter Erskine. It started in the 60s. Yeah. And so now we're going to play Pools. Now these are obviously more modern than things that you might have heard, but the process is the same. We're still playing over changes. This tune is actually kind of simple harmonically. It's two keys, but how it's much more heavily arranged as a piece, and features Miller on the melody in a lot of ways. So that's unusual for jazz too, for the bass player to play the melody. And Miller's playing the melody on this tune. So this is called Pools. No pressure. Probably will.
Let's make it all the way through the solos.
Yeah, I got it.
correctly.
This one is tricky for us because it sounds so similar in a lot of ways. It's easy to get lost. So we have to concentrate really hard. Hopefully, we'll do that for you.
Okay.
As we were playing that, my mind was going a lot of different places, not always on the performance, which often happens, and it's a sign of advanced age or very little maturity or something, I don't know. But anyway, I was thinking about, we've been rehearsing at a room in UCSB, which is terrible, acoustically. And playing in here allowed us to play so soft. And you hear each other so clearly that it's really a beautiful acoustic in here. I was worried about it having come over here the other day, but this back wall being like really hard and making a hard sound. But it's really nice. Yeah, I like music. Yeah. So it made me think that. It made me think about the fact that where a group plays has a lot to do with how they play. You know, it being a very intimate space here, we're playing a certain way that we wouldn't play in a bigger space or in a wider, and the acoustic makes a big difference too. You know, we can do things like the way Matt started. So we never even came close to doing anything like that before rehearsing the tune. We've rehearsed this tune a lot. So it's a really interesting little side note to what we've been talking about, and how an acoustic space can really drastically affect how a group performs. And the kind of choices that we are allowed to make is directly affected by the acoustic. So that was Pools. And we're going to play a tune called Choices by Michael Brecker. And oh, it's actually by Mike Stern. I'm sorry, but it was on Michael Brecker's first solo record that came out after Pools came out on Steps Ahead. And I remember this very clearly because Michael Brecker came to UMass when I was at UMass and played with us. I played that tune with him, with Michael Brecker, a big band arrangement that my director had written. And I slaved over learning that drum band. I mean, I was in the drum practice room every day for like a month. Michael Brecker's coming. So that tune had a lot of different feels to it. Somebody asked me about, what do I think of rock and roll? Well, didn't you hear some rock in there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's still jazz. It still has a jazz aesthetic. And there was some reggae at the beginning. A lot of different things. So jazz can be a lot of things. So Choices is from Michael Brecker's. It's a Mike Stern tune, the guitarist, who from his first solo record, and it's a great recording. Beautiful. It's another one of my favorite recordings. That first Michael Brecker record. You too, right? This is incredible. So this is Choices, and a very different kind of vibe. This is when I actually have to watch the music for. Actually, I pretend to watch the music to make people think I can read music. It's a sign of love and respect. Us giving each other a hard time. That's what that's all about. That's also a tradition of jazz to kind of put each other down like subtly. Anybody know Chris Seimer? He grew up in Santa Barbara. Yeah, Chris Seimer. He's the king of the put down. It's awesome. I learned everything I know about putting people down. Oh, you would love him. He's brilliant.
He's a very generous man.
I'm trying to remember what his best ones. choices, again, we were talking about creativity and what we're doing. One of the things, we've been rehearsing with acoustic piano, with a grand piano, and this is the first time that we're playing with Dan playing his keyboard. So that really actually really changes greatly our conception of the tune, how he plays the tune, the kind of sounds he chooses to make, because he has a deeper palette of sounds, a bigger palette of sounds. He can choose that kind of electric clavinet, that kind of sound, or a sampled piano sound or something. You have a lot of different choices there. Yeah. So, and I was also thinking about pools. Again, things I'm thinking about when we're playing. Thinking about pools, the fact that pools is a very technical tune for the saxophone, because Michael Brecker is such a monster technician of the saxophone. It kind of forces Matt to play a certain way, or have to play a certain way, because he's filling in a tradition of Michael Brecker. That's big. Those are big shoes to fill. And he's doing a great job. Matt came to UCSB a great player, and he's only gotten better in the time that he's been here. So I really, really have loved having him out here. Fortunately, he's graduating very soon. Good riddance. And if you come to the jazz concert on Wednesday, you'll hear him play a couple of tunes solo. He doesn't play in the big band, but he's going to play a couple of tunes at the end of the concert solo with us, including In a Sentimental Mood and It Don't Mean a Thing But Ain't Got That Swing. So that's great.
What was that last one, I think?
It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing. We're doing all Ellington pieces. This is Wednesday night. We have flyers back there. I'll show you in a second, because it's my last slide up here. Such a shameless plug. Shameless self-promotion. Okay, so we're going to play a tune from our concert. I asked Dan and Matt to learn Billy Strayhorn's. For some reason I have Chris Potter. It's actually a Billy Strayhorn tune. It's not Chris Potter. This is what happens when you do something like this at midnight last night. Chelsea Bridge is a really famous Billy Strayhorn song. No.
Oh, cool.
We're going to do this as a duo. Again, we're changing the instrumentation in order to make a difference and be creative in a different way. So changing the instrumentation. And they're strategizing right now about how they're going to play this. Bridge, and that was the most jazz. Like you all have an image of jazz in your head. And that was the most close to your image of jazz that you probably have, right? And I put it on there just for that, to show you what your perception is. And the first three tunes we played are jazz. They're strictly in the jazz tradition. They're played by jazz musicians, written in the jazz style, but more modern. But where it came from is what you guys just heard. It's all related. That tune was Chelsea Bridge AABA. It's a song form, 32 bars, first, second, and fourth phrase, 8-bar phrase are the same, and the bridge, the B section, which is different. God, I hope we can edit the singing off of this. Yeah, exactly. That's a very common song form in jazz in the old songs. Even though Chelsea Bridge was written by a jazz composer, he wrote it in the Tin Pan Alley style. A lot of the LNT tunes were written that way. So we're going to finish off here with a tune called Song for Bilbao, for Bilbao, Spain. Pat Metheny wrote this piece. And this is, again, more modern. So if anybody's familiar with Pat Metheny, to me, Pat Metheny is the quintessential jazz artist. He really has studied early players, including Louis Armstrong. However, you would never know it to listen to him play, because he plays in such a modern style and with such a unique personality that, but if you really listen to him, really follow him, really listen to a lot of the recordings he's made, he's a huge proponent of Ornette Coleman. Does anybody know who Ornette Coleman is? He was thought of as the kind of anti-jazz guy because he really played avant-garde music. But his music was really based in bebop. Just a different look at how Charlie Parker played bebop. And Pat Metheny was heavily influenced by that. So here is Song for Bilbao. We've really enjoyed being here. I've enjoyed being here. We can do questions and answers if you like. I've answered some people's questions, but let's play first, and then as my students are putting my drums in my car, we never make them do that.
I'll be putting my bass away.
That's exactly how it is, So here's the information for the concert on Wednesday night before anybody asks me again. And here is Song for Bilbao. And like I said, so what's the intro? Yeah. Yes. And then twice in book. And on my solo, just hit the bridge. For that bridge, I'll play it. Yeah, I know.
You are.
Because it takes swing so much. See, this is how it is. You're seeing how it is. Hey, even better. 1, 2, 1, 2.